Thank you so much for joining me, Mary Lou, for this webinar. And also thank you everyone who are joining now and also listening to the recording after this. So we are going to be sending through the recording. So if you don't quite capture it all, please just hold tight and it will come into your inbox later on today. And today we're going to be running through thought leadership within the education industry. And here's just a quick overview of what we've got as well. So today we're going to do a brief introduction to thought leadership, asking why are educators becoming thought leaders. And a lot of this as well is going to be driven by the one and only thought leader, Mary Lou O'Brien as well, who I've been fortunate enough to work with over the years. And I'm sure that many of you follow on social media, whether it's on Twitter or LinkedIn and so on. Before we do that, I'm just going to give you a very quick introduction or overview of Digistorm. I'm not sure if you have had any interaction with Digistorm. You might have just registered for this webinar and that's the first you've heard of us. But look, Digistorm was founded in 2011 in Burleigh Heads on the sunny Gold Coast. Not so sunny today, but we are still based up here. We've got about 45 employees at this point in time. And actually this year we recently opened our second office in Denver, Colorado, which was a fantastic business move given that every school is closed until late August in America. So we work with about just under 600 schools, I think, at the last count. And I'd like to think that we're recognized leaders in software development for schools. So I'm the Director of Sales and Marketing. My name is Chris Lang, and I'm joined here by Mary Lou O'Brien as well, who I've just introduced. But Mary Lou, I think it's probably worthwhile you giving us the introduction to yourself. I know quite a lot about you. I've worked with you, as I said, but I'll hand this over to you. Oh, you're on mute.
Excellent. Great way to start. Yeah, look, I have got a very varied background, starting off launching one of Australia's first internet businesses in '97. And then after a short, well, not really that short, but 6 years, but in lots of varied positions through Swinburne University, and then moving to Melbourne Girls Grammar as Director of e-learning. And then that moved to the position slightly changed to Chief Digital Officer in 2017. So I finished up at Melbourne Girls Grammar at the start of this year, end of January, and launched MLO'Brien Proprietary Limited. So again, a bit like you, just pre-COVID, but given my history with blended learning and online learning, that is where some of my strengths lay. So it's actually been a really great move for me, which is, it's an exciting time. Lots of change on the way.
Fantastic. Yeah, when I heard you had left Melbourne Girls Grammar, I think I emailed you and you did say we'd see you around the traps, and here we are. So
yeah, exactly.
It's great. It's great. So look, I guess today it is, what is thought leadership? Thought leadership has been a big thing, and I've heard a lot more about it, particularly with the rise and prevalence of social media now. So, I think a thought leader is a trusted and experienced person within their field and industry, and someone who's actually willingly open and open enough to share their expertise and opinions. So you can be an individual thought leader or organizational thought leader. And what does a thought leader to you, Mary Lou?
Yeah, look, it absolutely is about sharing. For me, it's someone who's authentic. They're open and often accessible as well is a huge benefit. That if they're approachable and you can ask them for advice, but they also freely share. So I follow a lot of thought leaders, and I'm connected with them across all different platforms and across all areas of expertise. But absolutely, that trust and experience is what you're looking for.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. And look, thought leaders can often gain loyalty, I feel, by supportive followers. So I think there's a lot of people that we meet during our time within the industry, but obviously as well, online with social media is gaining a lot of followers that you might not necessarily have met in real life, in my thoughts. And so, look, why do you think educators are becoming thought leaders, Mary Lou? So, what's your thought on that?
Yeah, look, I think particularly on Twitter, there are a lot of educators on Twitter, so that seems to be a really good platform for educators to begin. It's also about setting themselves up, their personal branding as an expert. So whether that's in an area, a subject area, curriculum area, like history or STEM, or whether it's about preparing for the future and looking ahead to perhaps what their next role is to be. So they're probably the two main drivers for doing it. Or, there are certainly a lot of educators that end up going out on their own, like I've recently done. Yeah. And it's certainly about setting up a profile for us as experts in our area. Yeah.
For sure. And look, I've just got we've got a couple of tips up here. So a lot of people actually struggle to find thought leaders in the industry. So it is good to just sometimes document, those areas that you're passionate about, and then you can just start a list or start following. You don't necessarily have to connect with people on social media, but now you can follow. It's I know that you've got a lot of followers on Twitter and LinkedIn, Mary Lou, as well, of those people who do that.
Yeah. And I think, I have focused on some of those key areas that I'm interested in. And I think you quickly, once you sort of follow the right people, it just explodes, really. You start small and it can happen quite quickly.
The snowball effect.
Yeah, definitely.
And so, look, what do you think are some of the benefits of thought leadership, and why might someone wish to come on?
Yeah, as I mentioned, for me, it was more about personal branding and positioning myself in the market. I'd been at Melbourne Girls Grammar coming up 10 years, and I knew that I was going to take the next step. So I'd spent probably started in 2017 when I got the role of Chief Digital Officer. That was a big promotion, a big title, and more responsibility, but I knew it was going to be a great stepping stone. So it was about setting me up in the marketplace for that future growth. It was also very much about boosting the brand of my employer, Melbourne Girls Grammar. We were doing some amazing, really innovative stuff, and yet no one seemed to be listening or looking. And so even before 2017, we probably really started back in about 2015. We made sure we were across social media, and I was pretty much managing all the social media for the school and pushing out all the content across LinkedIn and Twitter at that stage, and not so much Instagram, but certainly across Twitter was my baby and where my expertise lay, I suppose. So, but it was about boosting the reputation of Melbourne Girls Grammar and letting people know what we were actually doing, and it absolutely paid off. We were in the end, we had to open up the school for tours where educators had to book in for tours because we were hosting, over 100 plus every year. Wow. Educators coming from all around the globe to come and visit us and see the school and hear what we'd done. So that was a really big part of it. Certainly, I think I mentioned to you that becoming a thought leader wasn't actually what I was thinking I was doing. It was more about building personal brand, and coming from a bit of a marketing background, that's what it was about for me. Yeah. And it was about shifting my career.
Yeah, and I think it's funny, but I think you're very fortunate in the way that you had a institution like Melbourne Girls Grammar that supported that, as well as, because I still am there are very few chief digital officers within education. I don't know, that's in my experience. I'm not sure. Is that something that you've found as well?
Yeah, absolutely. I think Catherine Miston at Melbourne Girls Grammar was a visionary. Her role, the role I started there in 2009 was Director of E-Learning, and that was the first I'd ever seen advertised in the K-12 sector. Coming from higher ed, it was a common role in higher ed, but it was absolutely the first I'd seen advertised in the K-12 sector. So I knew I was onto a good thing when I saw that advertised, and she was certainly on board with supporting me in that sort of marketing role of the school. And we very quickly moved to making it compulsory for all exec members to have LinkedIn and Twitter. I think everyone soon saw the benefits of that in building our own professional learning network. And I think all of our exec team would have said that a lot of their learning actually came from Twitter.
And on that, did you get much resistance from any of the like school executives to force it when you forced them down the LinkedIn or Twitter route?
Not really. You know, with LinkedIn, it was a matter of, I'll sit with you for an hour and let's do this together. Yep. So for those that didn't feel quite so confident, they were really well supported. Yep. And Twitter, you know, we actually encouraged all staff soon after to be on Twitter. We encouraged staff that were going on trips and excursions, and particularly overseas trips. It was almost mandatory that they had to have at least one person travelling. And by the end of my time there, it was really every teacher that was going on a trip should have a Twitter account, because they were expected to put out at least 1 or 2 tweets a day, updating everyone back home about how the trip was going, or photos of the girls doing, you know, visiting NASA or whatever it was. And that worked really well for us as a secondary form of communication to parents as well.
Yeah, you were saying that because I think we talked about earlier that within, you know, a lot of school marketers, when you look at in the education industry, Twitter doesn't provide them much of it in terms of return on investment from you know, a marketing standpoint or driving enrollments. And a lot of schools now just simply integrate it with their Facebook and just push from Facebook to Twitter. But I think the opposite can be said for leaders within education from a thought leadership. There's a lot of educators on Twitter, would you say?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think the beauty of Twitter is that it's instant and it's authentic. So if you have got future parents following those accounts and they're seeing what the girls are doing day to day and live, seeing that joy, you know, I think that is really, really powerful. And you can't buy that. You know, that authenticity is what sells it. The benefit too of having a LMS like Schoolbox was that our internal parents and students didn't actually have to have a Twitter account, because we embedded the Twitter feed on Schoolbox. And so you could walk into our library and the library team would be live streaming the Twitter feed from the girls on City Week, for example, or on a camp in the Northern Territory. So anyone coming into that space, or indeed logging onto the LMS, could click on a link and see the live feed of pictures and commentary from a trip. So that was also about boosting excitement for the girls going on that trip the following year, or to engage them in an overseas trip that, you know, they could potentially join in year 10 or 11, you know. So it was about building community. As well.
And look, shout out to Schoolbox, a great friend of ours and a great platform. I know we've had a lot of success with them, Mary Lou, and I think a few of them are on the call, or at least a lot of the schools as well on this webinar today. So, Mary Lou, what's the difference between a thought leader and a subject matter expert, do you think?
Yeah, look, I think probably thought leaders are often subject matter experts as well, but it's that openness and their willingness to put themselves out there and speak about that, place themselves as an expert and share their expertise. Yeah.
And like, do you think that applies particularly with, you know, politically contentious or sensitive topics?
Yeah, look, you know, there's an element of risk, I suppose.
Sure.
I don't worry too much about that. You know, I always say with Twitter, the life of a tweet is 18 seconds. So, sure. You know, we certainly didn't have anything go wrong, which was great. But, you know, I think the benefits certainly outweigh the risks. And, you know, it is about being authentic again. Some of the other points there, that it's about leading with your confidence and conviction. And so you're putting yourself out there, but you're doing it around a subject that you're confident in. So, you know, I think that makes a difference to, you know, to be able to stand up publicly and voice your opinion about something you feel so strongly about. And it is, I guess, I mean, the subject, the title says it all, it is your thoughts, right? And I know, you know, you can, like Mary Lou, you have very strong views on using mobile phones and the school, and it's all about what your thoughts are, what you believe is best as well. So and it's being open to those conversations. Of course, not everyone's going to agree with you, but I love nothing more than someone coming back and having a really robust conversation about why I'm wrong and seeing whether they can convince me otherwise. And, that can be really enjoyable in itself too.
Challenging the status quo. And I mean, from choosing your niche or, if you have expertise or opinions in a few different areas, how do you choose a niche to focus on?
Yeah, look, I think it is about picking those subjects that you are most passionate about. So for me, it's not all tech related. I say girls' education is one for me, as well as, I've just come off a great call around VR and AR. So emerging technologies is another one I'm interested in. So I have a whole, gamut of areas. But the ones I will speak on will be the ones that I'm most confident about speaking on, and it's about the depth of knowledge on that topic.
Of course.
So it's about your reputation in that area. So if you are going to focus on just one or two, do you already have a reputation for knowledge in that area? Do people know you as the expert? And do you have already established networks and connections?
Yeah, absolutely. And I know when you, a couple of years ago, a few years ago, you've said you made the decision to kind of establish your personal brand, not so much as a thought leader. One of the most effective platforms that you, to use, do you think?
I'd definitely say Twitter for education, but certainly LinkedIn as well. And LinkedIn will really give you that recognition outside of education, which, I often get the feeling that in education, corporates look down on educators.
I get that
a little bit.
Yeah,
and it's really hard. And I've come the other way. I've come from corporate into education through higher ed K-12, and but I still feel that generally people go the other way. But having your own website is important as well, where you can blog or post articles, where you can really hone that niche that you want to focus on. And also not forgetting traditional media. If you have the opportunity, and I think anyone on LinkedIn and Twitter, as much as I am and seen as a thought leader perhaps, the opportunity to start coming through. So I built quite strong relationships with the editors, the education editors of our local newspapers. And while sometimes they want the goss on what's happening, which I never bought into, but it's just being able to know that you can pick up the phone to them as well. In the last 12 months of my role at Melbourne Girls Grammar, there'd been an article that had gone out, and whilst we'd issued a press release, they twisted the title to be about, elite school does whatever. I was like, every single article does not have, in regards to independent schools, does not need to have the title elite. So I gave them some other options.
No, very nice.
But it goes two ways. We expect them to publish our press releases, and often there are going to be stories that come out about schools that are both positive and negative.
Absolutely. Just not trying to buy too much into that kind of that hype or that narrative, right?
Exactly.
So do you have any recommendations for getting yourself in the door, like a foot in the door when speaking at events or co-hosting webinars, I guess, like this?
Look, I think once you establish yourself, the opportunities just come. I truly haven't worked that hard at it. I still remember my first conference presentation only a few years back. I was nervous as all get out. I don't feel I'm not a confident speaker. I hate speaking at conferences, but I really push myself to do that. And, obviously the first one's always harder than the following ones, but once you start, you just sort of get on a bit of a roll and you build that reputation. And once people hear your messaging, so it is about having that niche again that we talked about, and really, pushing that. But look, the opportunities just do flow in the door, really.
And what advice would you have? You're very fortunate, I guess, in many ways that you've had this marketing background before you came into education. So you had kind of the lay of the land or the best way to set yourself up. But Peter Cottle's asked, what advice would you have for educators who don't have that sort of background, to bring, to help push their experience and knowledge?
Yeah, well, I mean, webinar like this, of course, Peter.
Yeah. Thanks, Peter.
Yeah, look, it is hard. And I have a lot of teachers say to me, I could just never put myself out there like that.
Yeah.
I find that challenging myself. It doesn't come naturally to me. And, I've said that to colleagues and they've gone, oh, really? But you do it so well. And it's like, oh my God, you've got no idea. But I am one, I do love a challenge. So when I find something really difficult, I really, tackle it head on. And then the enjoyment you get from actually having achieved something that you never thought you could is so great that it inspires you to keep trying. So, I'm on a steep learning curve like anybody else, but it is just putting yourself out there to start with. And that is terrifying. Yeah, absolutely.
I can imagine. So content curation. I mean, when you are a thought leader or we're looking to establish, you've got to be putting out quite regular content. Do you have any? How did you start brainstorming, I guess, blog or video topics for that? if this is what comes to your head.
Yeah, look, it really is. I'm looking, and that's part of the benefit of being on Twitter and LinkedIn. You're seeing what the topics are of interest at that time. So. What are the questions that people are coming to you with? Yeah. What are they seeking assistance in? It's looking at what's trending online on those platforms. Yep. Obviously, as soon as we went into lockdown, it was all about remote learning, online learning. So I knew, that's one of my areas of expertise. So I knew that I had to start putting some articles together around that. I do it very informally, Chris. You'll be disappointed. There's not too much planning. But, it will take me sort of 2 days to at least to write a good article. Yeah. It's also about telling a story with your content, making it relatable to people. Yep. And setting that tone of voice with your content so that it is authentic and reflects what you believe in. Sure. Which makes it then unique to you.
And I guess from our side, we've always found when we're pushing out content to our followers, it's about providing quality content, that isn't what they read in every other blog or, everything else. And at Digistorm, we set a tone of voice, obviously, about how we want to be, I guess, portrayed. Did you have any tips on setting your tone of voice, or is it just, as it comes?
It's just natural. It's very authentic.
That's good. That's good. It's authentic. I like it.
Yeah. And look, honest and, hopefully transparent and all those things. But I have never given it that much thought, I suppose. But it's probably something I should give more thought to.
Reading into it too much, I know. So what do you believe your responsibilities as a thought leader are to someone of influence? I know, what are those thought leader, those attributes you think?
Yeah, for me, it's standing by my values, which you can see there on the screen. It's honesty, integrity, and transparency. And I think if you work out your values as an individual and stand by them, that will put you in good stead.
So really trying to avoid that clickbait?
Yeah. Yes, absolutely. Yeah.
And how do you nurture and connect with your followers to create a supportive following group?
I think that is about giving them something as well. Yeah. That certainly helps. They have to feel as though they're getting something in return for following you. So whether that's information or just the connection, it's about knowing that audience, who are your followers, so that you know exactly what they need from you. It's providing the quality, as we mentioned, again, being approachable, responsive and willing to engage with them, and providing original commentary, as you said, just not what everyone else is putting out. Sure. It's your story. Yeah. Yeah,
no, look, absolutely makes sense. And do you engage a lot with your followers on LinkedIn or Twitter and respond and start the conversation?
Yeah, absolutely. I share a lot of things too. So, if I see a webinar or an article that I think will be of interest to someone that I know is following me, I absolutely shoot things off all the time, all day, every day. I'm, I'll be, and often trying to connect. I'll connect people as well.
Yeah,
I think that's really important. If I, talking to this fellow on this call to New York this morning around VR, one of the developers is someone I've met, a VR developer in Melbourne. But I also know someone that's doing similar work to him in Vancouver. Wow. So before the webinar, on LinkedIn, I sent her the link in Vancouver and said, you may be interested in this call from New York with this fellow from Melbourne, blah, 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 and just, facilitating those connections. And, we live in a global world, and technology, it makes it so easy. Yeah. There's no excuses. And, from a school perspective too, I can't tell you the number of connections we made online. David Price, who most educators will know, I actually connected with him initially years and years ago on a Sunday night on Twitter when he happened to be in Melbourne and was looking for somewhere to drink in Fitzroy. And we started this bit of a banter. And then I said to him, if you're free tomorrow, would love to catch up, would love to show you and talk to you about what we're doing at Melbourne Girls Grammar. And he said, absolutely, what time would you like me there? And we established this fantastic friendship with David. He was a good friend to the school over the years and came in and did, came in then later as a consultant to do a lot of work with us when he first released his book Open, which I think was in about 2013. So, but also speakers for girls on trips, overseas trips. We had, the first year we ran our middle years enterprise tour of the US, I just searched my professional learning network in the US and found had been an Australian coder. Yep. She had a career at Google and was in transition, and I reached out to her as she was in her early 20s at that stage, but had a real reputation in Silicon Valley.
Sure.
And said, this is my story. I'm looking for a speaker to come and speak to these 11 and 12-year-olds from Australia. They're going to be in Silicon Valley on these 2 days. Would it be possible for you to drop in at some stage and have a chat to them about your career? Wow. And she said, absolutely. Awesome. So many opportunities and stories like that have
so
come
just
out.
Virtual connections turning into real connections.
Absolutely.
I love it. Well, look, I'm just going to finish up and then we'll jump into some Q&A, Mary Lou. So, look, if you don't know, I'm just trying to throw out there, we've got some Digistorm resources. Blog.digistorm.com is the address, and we've got a lot of articles there about thought leadership. And this was one we're really surprised with the level of engagement that we did have. So on one of these posts a while ago, we started getting a lot of traffic, and we realized it's something a lot of schools look at, and hence why we went through with this webinar. So before we go, we do have a webinar tomorrow as well. I'm actually doing one about how to manage extracurricular activities in post-COVID. So that's tomorrow at the same time. But look, just want to see, before we sign off, if anyone has any questions for the great Mary Lou at all. Give it a minute or so. Thank you, Mary Lou. I really found it interesting how you actually, I don't want to say enforce, but started making the ecology executive at Melbourne Girls Grammar, be quite open and honest and consider thought leadership, or consider their social network and consider that profile as part of their professional profile as well. I think that was really interesting, because we're starting to see a few schools trying to do that. And I know from my conversations with a few people that they've had a bit of pushback. But it's really interesting to hear that from you.
Yeah, look, it was quite successful for us, and we really, I think if the executive team set the example to the rest of the staff too, but it is a really powerful medium to be sharing and promoting your school on LinkedIn.
You've got an active following as well within your own school community. Certainly that you can go there. Let me just hit one come through. Beautiful. Well, look, I really appreciate you coming, Mary Lou. Just do want to give a shout out if you do want to follow. If you don't already, make sure you do follow Mary Lou on Twitter, on LinkedIn. Mary Lou, do your handle, or do you want to?
Yeah, MLO'Brien 1 on Twitter. LinkedIn, unusually, I only actually connect with people that I have met. So whether that's face-to-face or virtually. And I have a lot of reasons why I do that. So my network is very strong, and it's purposeful. I've turned it into something that is really purposeful for me, and that enables me to share articles and contact people quite freely because of that. So for a lot of reasons, but absolutely, if I've met you before, just tell me where, and happy to connect on LinkedIn. Otherwise, everything I put on LinkedIn is public anyway, so you can see it. And MLO'Brien 1 on Twitter.
Fantastic. Hey, thank you everyone for joining. We'll send you through this recording, and a huge thank you to you, Mary Lou. I couldn't have done it without you, obviously.
Thanks, Digistorm. You've been a great partner over the years. Loved working with you.
Thank you.
Thank
Appreciate
you.
it.